Hello and welcome everybody to New Earth Consciousness. Tani here, and I'm with Jasmin Montoya. And so, Jasmin, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Jasmin, I'm just gonna inform everybody about who you are. Just gonna read through your bio here, okay? So, Jasmin is an energy healer, spiritual guide, and grief facilitator with a focus on intergenerational trauma. She combines the rituals and ceremonies of her lineage, her colorful life experiences, and her decade-long studies in trauma recovery to guide women on their healing journey. She's a single mother of one who trailblazed a new way of being with her child and future generations. Being a cycle breaker and working with many on the same path, she believes that having a deep understanding of your life experiences, awakening to what needs to be healed and felt through in order to be released, and processing the grief that comes along with this is key in rewiring toxic patterns and stepping into your power. Healing is possible no matter what you have experienced in life. She also offers a unique approach to grief work, as she doesn't believe in death being the end, but the beginning of a new chapter. You can still have a relationship with your loved ones if you are open to it. And so she can be found at coachingbyjasmin.com. So happy that you're here. When we had our little pre-interview chat, it was for me an instant resonance. And I think really in particular for me, what I love about your story is really reclaiming your heritage and the way that you do this healing work. So could you open with that?
Once again, I'm really happy to be here. And yeah, my story was a lot of kind of going back to the beginning. And that's what I always say to my clients too, like what happened at the beginning? You know, the reclamation of your story and of your ancestors. Our ancestors play such a key role in the epigenetics or even in the narration of who we are today, even if we haven't met them. So in understanding where I came from, I'm Colombian descent, even though I was born in America, so I'm first generation. And so I had the duality of trying to assimilate here in America, but then also my parents' very traditional Colombian household of spirituality and shamanism, but then also sprinkling the Catholicism and religion. So I was able to see so many different facets of my lineage, but ultimately what always spoke to my soul was how the ancestors lived and of just really being one with nature and owning in our culture the spiritual gifts that my mother, my aunts, my grandmother, and I'm pretty sure those who I haven't even met had. And that was just something that I knew when I was younger. I had these experiences, but didn't feel comfortable in really understanding what it meant because of the duality of also being in a religious family.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back to your roots, I mean, Catholicism has been around for a long time, right? In
Mhm.
Colombia and the Hispanic countries, Mexico, all those places, Latin America. So, um, in your upbringing, even though Catholicism was very much present, you saw maybe some more indigenous traditions growing up.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, we had our own little Colombian shaman who was like a family member and who would come over from Colombia and we would do rituals. And in my immediate family with my mother and father, we believed a lot in psychics and mediums and understanding that there's so much more to this world than just meets the eye. So that was just something that was normal. It was
Yeah.
normalized.
But then at some point it shifted, right? Then your parents decided, no, we're gonna divorce ourselves from those traditions and just be hardcore Catholics the way it's prescribed. Am I understanding that story? Or
No, the beautiful thing I would say about and my aunts and uncles, every little unit was different, and I
yeah.
was very blessed to have my parents who kind of blended the two, even though it was opposites and so many things were kind of contradicting itself. They still brought in how they were raised,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
but then also were really open to spirituality. And like I said, we always had a shaman come
Hmm.
and kind of cleanse us, and we would do rituals. And they believed a lot in spirits, and just kind of understanding that there's more. But then they went to church every Sunday.
Hmm.
And so I
Yeah.
went to Catholic school. So I think that was the interesting blend of, okay, so we have this aspect here, but then also this core aspect that I believe was more from the ancestors. And I don't think they blended well. I think that was always my rebellious streak, and maybe
Yeah.
the challenge my parents had with me, because I always leaned more to spirituality, because that felt natural to me, where Catholicism and religion felt more controlled and trying to put you in a box, and I never wanted to be in a box. So I was able to have both, but it was challenging because
Yeah.
they contradicted each other.
Oh, I bet. No, that is so interesting. So tell us about your journey. Like, so when did you start going really deep into your own gifts and how you work with people?
Yeah, I always had certain gifts when I was younger. I could kind of see things and feel things, and I had this knowing, and I didn't know what that meant. I just knew things, and things would happen, and I
Hmm.
would see shadows in the corner of my eye, and it was interesting, and I knew that, like, my mother kind of saw the same thing with my father. But again, because of the religion that was overlapping, it was something that you don't want to discuss because it could be demonic. There was always that kind of stuff going on. So I just kind of left it alone. Um, and then it wasn't until I would say 29, 30, when I really was looking to become a mother. And I got this, like, vision of my child older, and him basically saying, like, well, why am I the way I am? Like, why are you raising me this way? And I didn't want to say the typical, like, well, because it is what it is, which is how I felt. And I'm like, okay, I think I need to go down the rabbit hole of really understanding myself. And I've had a few traumatic experiences in my life, near death experiences. And so I wanted to kind of make sure that I was grounded in my truth,
Yeah.
and make sure that it wasn't like my parents' truth, which they did the best that they could, but I wouldn't say that I wanted to follow in their footsteps, especially becoming a mother and having my own child. So I kind of just deep dived into, I was in New York, and I started kind of, like, doing yoga classes and understanding that spirituality. And that was nice and that resonated. But it wasn't until I moved to San Diego, where the freedom of, like, all of these healing modalities and what works for you, and understanding energy. And I'm like, oh, that's been my language all along.
Mm.
And I understand energy. I can read energy. And that was always the confusion for me when I was younger, is that I could read and feel stuff, but yet what people would portray would be different. So I was always confused by that, until I just started deep diving in energy healing and understanding that, oh, like, that's my language. And so once I honed into that, life felt easier for me, because it's like I can see and read energy, and those energies also translate into those who have transitioned. And so understanding that power and that tool of, like, being a bridge. So in my culture, it's shamanism and spirituality. And I resonate with that. And I feel like I also have that, where I can connect, to the other side and really understand things in a deeper manner.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, and so my healing journey kind of became that, and also being a cycle breaker of just, really living in my truth. And that truth is not according to how I was raised. And, that could be challenging, to many, when they're really just trying to own their truth and heal, and just say, I love you, but with all respect, I'm going to live my life the way I choose to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you know, for me, I have half of my side of my family is Mexican, and I was also kind of a cycle breaker. I became a single mother too, and that was like, poof. I got excommunicated immediately by my grandparents, which even though ironically my grandfather had a whole like other illegitimate family. You know, the double standards, the lovely double
Right.
standards of of what's different for men and women in Latin culture. But
Yeah.
I imagine that for you, maybe it was something similar, right? Like you were not willing to just kind of bow down and just like be a good wife, you know?
Yeah, and it was
Marry the
hard
right
because
guy.
right, right. I did all that and it blew up in my face. So, the lesson was learned the hard way, but that was one thing of me then owning and it was always that way. I was always
Yeah,
the challenging one, the rebellious one, the black sheep. Like, why are you so angry? Like what, like why can't you just like follow suit and be good? And I'm like, well, what does be good mean? Like I'm just trying to be me.
yeah,
And I think that was just so hard because it's like why is it that when I'm me I'm met with such like disdain or anger or and to when doing the work you understand that you reflect and there's a mirror that some people don't want to see, and that was the trigger. And that's always been the trigger with me, is like me being in my truth triggers those who wish they could be in their truth, or maybe they don't have an understanding of what their truth is.
yeah, yeah. I find that black sheep tend to have, and you know, you do grief work, they tend to carry a lot of grief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's like, okay, I've been given this role of the black sheep, which is my authentic self. And so it's almost like there's a double-edged sword of, okay, so I have this blueprint of I am the black sheep, the rebel, whatever, the one that's going to illuminate everything. And because of that, then I risk essentially not belonging.
And
Yeah.
I think many of us, and I'm speaking for myself, but I'm pretty sure you probably felt the way. I never felt like as much as I loved my family, like I
Yeah.
really do to this day, I never felt like I belonged. I always said, like, I would always joke, I'm like, even though I look like my parents, I'm like, I'm the mailman's kid, right? Like I was just dropped off here because I just seem to be physically not different, but internally so different that I never felt like I fit in.
Yeah.
And that was like the hardest part, because it's like I really love my family, and doing all this work at the beginning, I struggled because I did get attacked. Like, people were thinking that I was trying to break up the family, or like, why are you causing
Yeah.
issues? And there were certain family members that I had to cut off. And who wants to do that? That's where more of the grief came in, because it's like, gosh, like it wasn't that I wanted to do it, but I understand that I need to do it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy. In Family Constellations, Bert Hellinger, who's the creator of Constellations work, he has so much respect for the black sheep because they really are the ones that are kind of creating that new path in that family tree. They're like carving a whole nother new timeline. And so, if any of you are black sheep, we're,
Yes.
we're, we're saluting you. We're saying thank you for who you are and what you do. You know, we don't hear it enough. You know, we're often told like something's wrong with us. Why don't you fit in?
Yeah.
Um, so my question around like grief work,
Mhm.
you know, that's a term I've heard. What does that mean? Like I imagine grief work is like we just sit around and cry. Like what
Yeah.
what goes around? What happens in grief work?
Yeah. So, and it was interesting how I kind of fell into it. It was just like a few chapters in my life where my grandfather, and who I loved dearly, who was, I say I follow in his footsteps, except he was more of the religious
Mm,
teacher,
mm,
and I'm more spiritual. But he was is a beautiful light and soul, and could see people through, so I believe, even though he didn't say it, he was also an energy worker. Like he also
yeah.
understood energy and could read it, because he brought out the best in people.
Mm,
And so he was the patriarchal, right? He was like the stump of our family tree. Like, so when he transitioned, it really shook our family.
mm,
And that's when I kind of delved into I know that I can see and understand that death is not the end. It's just the end of this human chapter, and then there's an after. So I started kind of delving into my relationship and building it differently with my grandfather when he transitioned, and that was beautiful. And then my grandmother transitioned, and then my friend transitioned, and then I had a really horrible divorce where there was a lot of child custody issues. And then, so there was like a lot of grief. I felt overwhelmed, like I was drowning in grief. And how do I even begin to understand how to move through it?
Yeah.
So, grief work isn't something that is common, right? Like, we
Yeah.
don't understand or learn about grief or death and how to move through it because people feel uncomfortable. People feel like, oh, it's here, but I don't want to feel it. So let's just either do something else to numb it or just like it doesn't exist. And here's the thing, I always say, once grief knocks at your door, it's here.
Mm.
Especially if you're grieving someone who's transitioned, like that will always be there. So it's a matter of making room for it and allowing yourself to move through it. So grief work, and in our circles that I facilitate, it's not always also someone who transitioned. There's grief of like your chapter ending, like a part of you that needs to die in order for the new to come.
Yeah.
You can grieve your a divorce, you can grieve your child, you can grieve a dog, you can grieve a chapter in your life if you have to move.
Mm.
So the circle really just entails like being okay with where you're at and being okay with like being sad or being angry. And where does that fit in your body? Like, where is it? And how can we kind of, again, not push it away, but acknowledge it and honor it? Like, it should be a ceremony. It should be honored in its
Mhm.
way, just like life is honored, just like birthdays are honored. And so there's so many people who are like, I don't know what to do. And it's like, you don't do anything. So we'll sit and we'll talk and be like, where are you today? Where is it in your body? I believe a lot in the mind body connection and somatics and like feeling through it with your body,
Mhm.
doing movement. And we do it out. I live in San Diego, so we do it out in the ocean and the beach, and nature in itself, being out there is medicine.
Yeah.
And we watch the waves and we kind of sit in meditation, and it's like the waves can show us how to move through it. There's sometimes when it's like cool and we're riding through it. There's sometimes when it's crashing. There's sometimes when it's like there's no movement. And I believe that's how life is, and that's how grief work is as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting how grief can just show up. As you were speaking, when we do our work in nature, it's so powerful. I remember going on this little road. I was in college and I was driving up Highway 1. I wanted to go see my brother in Santa Cruz. I was going to UCLA. And and I knew that I was having a hard time. Like I was kind of mildly depressed, but couldn't really access it, what it was about. And but I was definitely searching. And I remember pulling off of the Highway 1 and sitting at the ocean. I love the ocean. It is so healing. And I was sitting there meditating on this cliff, that was facing the ocean. And I don't know, I was there for maybe 20 minutes with my eyes closed. And by the time I had opened my eyes, the fog had rolled in and I didn't even realize. So everything, I was like surrounded by white. Like it was just
Mm.
white. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see the ocean. I couldn't see the road. Couldn't see my car. It was just like me in this like, and it felt like, I don't know. It was just so like it hit me and I just started like sobbing, because I was so touched, and I really do think, and I imagine that with your work and working with the ancestors that you get signs from nature, right? When maybe an ancestor's wanting to communicate to you,
Yes.
like, yeah.
Yeah. I really resonate with spiritual animals, like spirit guides.
Mhm.
So when my grandfather transitioned, I saw an owl and I saw feathers. And to me, I'm like, of course he would be an owl. Like
Mhm.
the old elder wise
Yeah.
man, and my grandmother came as a monarch butterfly because she was very much into like the transition. And so I was like she was the if my grandfather was like the stump and the roots, like she was the one who was able to like help move the family in different ways.
Mhm.
Then my girlfriend, she came to me as a ladybug because she used to call her son Bug.
Mhm.
And then I saw when she passed. It's always like when they transition,
Yeah.
like that's when I see it. And then all of a sudden, it's like when I'm speaking to them or calling them in, I that's when I see like the owl or the ladybug. It was my girlfriend's birthday recently in October, and my friend was like, I went to this florist to get flowers and I saw ladybugs and I thought of you. And she sent me the picture, and it was the day of her birthday.
Mm.
So it's stuff
Yeah.
like that it's like it's not a coincidence. I know people want to be like, oh, that's, and I'm like, no, it's not. Like there are signs if you're open to it, there are signs everywhere. And what a beautiful way of still being connected, because they're not, I don't believe they're gone. I believe and I love this story and I want to share it that a shaman said to me regarding death. And I even explained it to my son this way because it's hard to explain to a child like what death is. And he goes, Jasmine, imagine you're in a car and the car is your body. Car is your human vessel.
Mhm.
And you're driving, and you, the person, is a soul.
Mm.
That's your soul. So as wear and tear happens, our car eventually will break down. But what happens? Do you the person break down with the car, or do you just get out and move out?
Right.
And I'm like, no, I'm like, and that make like that just
Yeah.
clicked. I'm like, that makes sense. Like we get so attached to this like 3D world, and like this is me and the way I look. I'm like, this isn't me. Like
Yeah.
my soul's inside, and it's a different frequency and energy to what my human vessel looks like. But when this goes, because that's just the natural life cycle of this body, doesn't mean that our soul goes too. Our soul still stays here in a different plane. And
Yeah.
so, how can we connect with that plane in order to continue that relationship? I think that's just such a like the I'm like the relationships and I love my family again. I'll continue to say that, but like
Mhm.
I feel closer to my ancestors and those beyond than I do here, because not only do we have our own language, I really truly feel that they can see you in a different light.
Yeah.
So we're in this 3D world. They'll be like, oh, well, you're the troublemaker, you're this and that. When they transition, they see your soul for what it is and they honor it more.
This is so true. It is so true. I it's interesting that you and I are connecting today because was it last night? Maybe night before last, super recently. Last night or night before last. My stepfather who my mom and he got divorced, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or whatever. And so we kind of lost touch with each other. There was a little bit of an estrangement, whatever. I mean, nothing, I'd never held any hard feelings, but he passed away. And yeah, he came in my dream, and it wasn't like your regular, like muddled, crazy dream because your mind's just trying to make sense of whatever you experienced during the day. It was definitely like this other quality where he was coming in, and it was like a soul to soul connection. Like there were no words spoken. He just looked at me and he turned and he walked into the light. I was like, oh, there he goes. You know,
Yeah.
happy trails, it was
Yeah.
fairly profound.
Aw.
Yeah, and so I think that what I love about what you're talking about is that yeah, this knowing, I don't think it's an idea. I think it's a reality that there is no death really. It's just a transition. Um, that there is this continuation of the relationship, or there is an opportunity. So if we can get beyond what we've been brainwashed to believe, which is you are your body, and when you're dead, you're dead, that's it. Or maybe, you go to heaven and that's it. Either there's just a disconnect. You don't, there's no communication. Um, I feel like when we spoke last, like you actually really inspired me to want to cultivate connection to my ancestors.
Mm.
And it really can, and I want the viewers to know and the listeners that it is something that can be felt. You can definitely make contact. I remember it was a kind of it was a family constellation. It was inward, it was done inwardly. And the practitioner had me, said, okay, now just visualize your ancestors beyond your grandparents, beyond the cause of what the problem is, blah, 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 blah. And so I wasn't really expecting anything. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, sure, I'll do that. And so the minute I called them forth, I felt so much love. I just started to weep. Like it really could be felt. And it's just like, whoa, I had no idea, it goes beyond just your grandparents or the people that you knew. They're really, right?
There are rows and rows of our ancestors, uh and they're waiting. They want to help us, but they can't unless we ask, unless we connect, unless
Yeah.
we establish a relationship. But yeah, it goes beyond, like, I like when I had a session, I just remember, like, I just saw rows and rows. I'm like, you have like thousands of people here, and you feel so alone, but you're not. Like, just call them in, just like, and I always say, because there are ancestors that you might not want to call in, let's be honest, right? So
Right.
always the ones that are connected to source and want to offer their unconditional love and support. They're there, and they want to help, because if we're healing and we're moving through stuff that they could never do, we also not only release the bind and chains within us, but with them as well. It's an
Mhm.
energetic ripple effect that happens when you step in your power and break cycles. You in turn help heal them too when they're in the other side.
Mhm. And so do you like what kind of when you work with clients, is a lot of this stuff done through like traditional ceremonies that you've learned, or do you create your own ceremony? Like what does the
Yeah,
work look like?
I did my own signature as always. I'm like, I
Gotcha.
don't like to follow,
Okay,
but
yeah.
you get pieces of things that I've seen in my childhood, learned throughout all this. And so I like to be by the ocean. That's because it's such a beautiful way of kind of relaxing the body.
Yeah.
And I go into like a trance meditation, and I love, especially with those who might not be so familiar with energy work, you know the sound alchemy and the bowls kind of help to move people into a state of just kind of relaxation. And then I just become the bridge.
Yeah.
I just become, then it's like, okay, then I start just kind of talking them and making them feel and see and go into. I always say, go back to your tree of life. Like,
Mm,
let's go back there, because we all have one, and that's where all our ancestors and loved ones and our history, our family history and everything kind of, that's where it lies. So I have them journeying there, and then watch what happens, like see who starts like coming and pulling in.
yeah.
So it's been a mixture. I always put my signature to everything, so it's been what I learned from childhood, but also what feels right to me.
Yeah, yeah. I had a conversation with someone. We talked a little bit about how because the earth is shifting, that you were in a place where we get to create new types of ceremonies, new ways of this kind of work. And
Mhm.
so not that the old ways of doing things are bad, but it's just um yeah, I was just curious like how what your approach was, and it sounds like you're very much like, well, I just listen to my intuition and what I know works, and because it can be felt and
Yeah. And there's certain
evolving.
pieces that what makes it powerful is the ancient way, is
Yeah,
doing it exactly like your ancestors did, because you're as you do it like them, you're calling them in and
yeah,
invoking that power.
yeah,
So never negate the ancestral ways, but what I feel like you and I are doing is we're calling that in, but also removing certain parts of it for it to be for the new earth. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because
Be
there's a
relevant.
reason why we're shifting out of that, but there's also some purity and power in taking little bits that
Yeah.
resonate with you and still kind of sticking to that flow because you're evoking their power. You're
Yeah.
calling them in. So that's super powerful.
Yeah, I think there's something really beautiful about just acknowledging that there are ones before you, and because of them, you are here, you know, like just that alone is just like, it's so, we forget. I think we're, you know, in our culture, which is all about instant gratification and me, and you know what I mean? We over obsess about ourselves and our own little lives that it's like you are actually part of a huge continuum, you know, and for those that are to come, you know, like, you know, if you have children or just the ways, and I'll say this though too, you don't even have to be one that has children. I mean, if you're an auntie who doesn't have children, you actually do have an impact to the ones that are going to come either through your brother or your sister or someone down the line. Like you are absolutely an influence.
Yeah.
So I feel like, you know, those people who don't have children, maybe they think, oh, well, you know, I don't have children. What does it matter? It's just going to end with me. And it's like, no, actually, that's not true.
Right. And just even the collective, you know, the impact you can have on your soul family, on strangers, you know, like you can even one day of doing something, a person years later can be like, I don't remember her name, but I remember her presence or I remember how I felt with her. Like that's impactful. It does not have to
Yeah,
be with your children if you choose not to have it.
it's
Absolutely not.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There are definitely memories I have in my life of just little interactions with quote unquote strangers that I'll just never forget, you know,
Yeah.
even though it was just a few seconds of exchange. Yeah, super powerful. What are some of the ways that you work with people now?
So I ever since COVID happened, I like to do remote because it was great to have that avenue open up to, oh, I can, because energy work can be done anywhere. You do not have to be in the physical room of someone.
Yeah.
So you can, I do remote work. I also do, I kind of do like in-house where I go to clients' houses and do the energy work there or the ceremonies depending on what they're looking for. And then once a month I facilitate, it's called Waves of Grief in San Diego, where we focus on the grief work
Mm-hmm.
and that's by
Beautiful.
the ocean.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Amazing. Awesome.
Mhm.
Um, is there anything else you want to leave with the audience? Any last words for now?
Yeah, I wanted to just kind of touch base a little bit about the fear and the fear around death and
Hmm.
how when you were talking about, you know, the brainwashing of it, uh, I those who fear death and don't really have an understanding of it, I urge you to just be open and understand like where the fear comes from. Because I feel like we've been so like pushed. There's so much fear based with everything. And fear is a control tactic. It's a tool. So this way we can stay small. This way we don't ask questions. This way we can follow suit and follow and you know, kind of like go in line. So if we continue to try to just remove that fear and engage with it, you know, like kind of like face your, you know, the things that you were scared. I just remember in my journey, like the biggest fear I had came true, and then it was like, oh, okay, like that was extremely hard and painful, but I survived it, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of like tapping into that, especially with death, because I know there is so much fear around death, you know, and getting older and what does it mean? But just like invite it in, invite that conversation in and engage with it and see what comes of it. Because I feel that removing that fear from death and being able to talk about it and cultivate your own relationship with death is super powerful because once again, you're not so focused on the end or what is this, you're more in the present moment and like owning your truth and rhythm about it.
Yeah. Beautiful. Awesome. Jasmine, thank you so much for your energy and just your presence. And this has been a really enriching conversation. So thank you so much. And for those that are listening, please like, subscribe, and share. And yeah, definitely check out Jasmine's website and what she has going. And yeah, much love to everyone. Thank you, Jasmine, for being here.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
All right. Bye, everyone.